there, welcome to Humans of Authenticity, and thank you for choosing my podcast. My name is Lily, and I'll be your host. Humans of Authenticity will share many heartfelt conversations with my guests on their stories and how they embrace their authenticity in all forms. Authenticity will be a buzzword unless we pause and reflect on what it means for us, for individuals like you and me. Join me in these conversations. In each episode, my guests will choose a keyword from a selection of 12, which will be used as the theme of the conversation. These keywords change frequently, so you will only hear the same keyword once. Enjoy the episode today. Hi, Camille. Thank you so much for joining me on our episode today of Humans of Authenticity. Would you like to introduce yourself to our listener first?
Yeah, sure. I'm Camille Sanders, CAM for short. I am currently working with ASAE, the Center for Association Leadership, as Senior Director of Career and Workforce Solutions. I am also a Diversity Executive Leadership Program alum, which is how I know UV. I've been in the association sector for a very long time. I've worked with a number of groups. Associations are my passions. I'm really excited to be here today and to have an opportunity to share with this community.
Thanks, Camille. I've been in this sector for the last 20 years too, and I love every single day that I rock up to work. What is it about the association sectors that make you feel so compassionate to be part of it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that my interest in association stems from a space of altruism. In my life, I've discovered over the years that I'm a very altruistic person, and I enjoy working for mission-focused organizations. It sounds a little cliche to say, but I'm also a people person. I really enjoy interacting with members, volunteers, staff, and a group of people who are all focused on a similar thing, the similar mission, which is the success of the organization. I found my passion in the association and nonprofit space, and it excites me just like you every day.
That's awesome. Let's start with your stories. Could you share 3 things that you love about yourself with our listeners?
Yeah, I love that I am a kind person. That's something that I'm very proud of. We live in a world today that sometimes is lacking kindness. And that's something that I take a lot of pride in, caring about people, looking out for people, and just being a kind person. I think another thing is my communication skills and abilities. I'm not perfect. I don't think anyone is, but I do enjoy connecting with people. Part of the reason that I got into the field that I'm in, associations, which is primarily, I tell people all the time, at my core, I am a marketer. I hold 2 different marketing certifications in addition to some other association experience, but that's the core of who I am. And I enjoy that because I'm a storyteller. And so I love communicating and connecting. And a third thing about myself that I like is, again, that altruism that I mentioned earlier. I am a giver. I care about people. I care about causes. I care about making the world a better place. And those are all things that I am particularly proud of within myself, that I like about myself.
Thank you for that. Go back to your first item, being a kind person, and I agree with you. We need a lot more kindness in the world these days.
Yeah.
If there is one kind thing that anyone can do today, what would that be?
I think opportunities for kindness present themselves all the time. I think there's not going to be one answer that is applicable for everyone because everybody's working in different settings. You know, some people are working remotely where they may not see another person for hours in a day. But I think it's looking for the opportunities. It could be as simple as being in a store and seeing someone drop something and being the person to stop, help them pick it up, asking someone how their day's going. I think it's about really being intentional and caring about other people. I think we live sometimes in a society that is laser focused on me, myself, and how we can get ahead and how we can advance and what's best for us. And I'm not saying those things are bad, right? We do have to look out for ourselves and care about ourselves. What you put out there into the world is sort of what you're going to get back. So if you don't care about yourself, you're going to exude that energy. I think caring about yourself is a bad thing, but I think we do need to be very intentional about including others in that process and just looking out for each other wherever the opportunity presents itself. So that's my mantra. It's how I try to live.
I love how you blend yourself in that circle of kindness. A lot of the time, especially a lot of the mothering figures I've seen, there is so much care for the kids and the children, and sometimes the mother's self get lost in that circle of kindness. So I love that.
Yeah.
Now go to the things that you love about yourself, being a giver. What I heard is that not only you care about the people around you, but you also care about the causes that you're working towards.
Yeah.
I found that the cause is decided by the organizations that we work with or we follow.
Yeah.
Whereas our core value to identify our own true self, our authenticity is something that we develop internally. So then it's become that parallel lines and a matrix of some sort of overlaps. My questions around this is, what's your advice for us to navigate that matrix? How can we align the two together so that we can find something that we truly passionate about?
Wow, that's a really exciting question. And I think for those of us in particular who work in the association community, the opportunities are plenteous, really. This is one of the reasons that I really enjoy and love working at ASAE, because ASAE is, we sort of unofficially in the association community call it the Association of Associations. It's representing and advocating for so many different organizations that represent different causes and missions and things to care about. But in terms of what we can do on an individual level, I think it's really figuring out what your passion is. And then we know in the association space, there's an association for everything, right? So figuring out what your passion is, that's something that has to happen on an introspective level within each individual, the things that you gravitate toward. Figure out what it is that you would do, without any accolades, without any payment, without even sometimes any recognition. If you find that thing, you found your passion. And once you find that, you can find organizations that may align with that. So for example, let's say you love to exercise, you're a fitness buff, right? In particular, you may love riding your bike. Well, there are groups that focus on bicyclists and biking, and maybe there are opportunities to join that organization and focus on how you can be of service in that space to advance the mission of that group and your passion by extension. So I think there are lots of opportunities, but it all starts within us, right? It's being introspective and figuring out what it is that you love, what it is that you're passionate about, and then how that connects with the world, maybe by supporting an organization, getting involved, volunteering. At least for me, I think that is the path.
I love that. You really focus on exploring yourself first. I think a lot of the time it's easier for us to look at the whole picture and see what's wrong with it. But it's hard to taking a step back and see where we are in that picture and see how we can change internally to make the picture around us better.
Yeah. I agree. I think it's so important. And again, I think that gets back to altruism and caring about something, understanding that the world is bigger than us, caring about something else and finding a way to make a difference and to contribute to the world in a bigger way. It's exciting.
Thank you for that. Talking about being introspective, I provide you with a list of 12 keywords to choose from for the conversation today.
Yeah.
Which word did you select?
I selected the word dare.
Which is the most exciting word. I'm so grateful that you picked up that word. Now, in the context of authenticity, how do you interpret dare?
Well, when I saw the list, it was a beautiful list, I have to say. It was very hard to choose my word. But when my eyes fell on the word dare, it immediately clicked for me. For probably the last 3 years, I feel like as a society, as a people, we've been in a season of watching people really dare to do exciting things. For me, the word dare really evokes thoughts of change, right? So that you can see the connection there. We're coming out of, what was essentially a worldwide pandemic, an unprecedented event that had not happened in the last 100 or so years. And so people were forced to adapt, people were forced to change, and a lot of people began daring to be their authentic selves, to take on new passions, to try new things. So that is what really attracted me to that word. And by definition, the word dare means having the courage to do something. And that's something that really resonates with me in my life.
I love that. And I love the bit about the courage to do something new.
Yeah.
The other thing I love from your story is you mentioned they evoke the thought of change.
Yeah.
Now, this is me. Change comes with unknown things. And by nature, human beings are wired to stay away from unknown things because it's so scary.
Yeah.
So, what was your motivation to explore the unknown things and turn towards dare and change?
Well, I am daring to do new things in my own life. I just started a new job in May of this year. So obviously, a career change is quite a dare, right? You never know if you're going to like an opportunity, if it's going to be a good fit. There are lots of things that you have to think about when you're doing that. And prior to coming to ASAE, I really was in a role that was focused on membership development and marketing. It was broad spectrum marketing across the association. But I did a bit of a pivot and came to explore a passion around careers and workforce solutions, which has been a part of my professional journey in other roles, but really focusing on that full time. So I think when I saw the word dare, it evoked thoughts for me personally of me daring to make that change recently. I also have started an LLC called Leadership Strategies, sort of a play on leadership, but it's leadership. And, there's going to be more to come on that. So I'll share more later. But that for me is really something that's passion based and mission focused for me. And so that was a long process of me getting to actually doing it, right? It required a lot of courage because I must have talked myself out of it, 10 times, right? Or given myself excuses for why I could wait or why I should wait. But I dared to do that. So I think for me personally, that connection to courage is really profound. And I think, both in our personal lives and even as association professionals, I think that we all have opportunities to dare to do something different in our lives, whether it's something new or just improving on where we are. Having that courage is what it takes. And that's what it's about at the end of the day.
I'm hearing a lot of passion and strong will here, and I love the energy that you're sharing.
Yeah, thank you.
I just found something else that I'm interested to learn more from your stories. So I've heard that at some point you talked yourself out of that program, which I've done to myself a lot of time. And even today, after being inducted as a Delft scholar, when I looked at my applications, I'm questioning whether that was my true self that I put on that application.
Yeah.
And really, that's just a classic example of imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
So my question for you is, how did you manage to get out of that imposter syndrome and motivated you to go for it?
I think it's baby steps, V. It's taking things one step at a time, one day at a time. And courage is not a one-time act. That's what I've learned in my life. I grew up being a person that always positioned other people ahead of myself. And as I mentioned earlier, I am not ashamed that I am a kind person, right? That's something that we should all aspire to be. But I think in my own life, I took that to extremes sometimes and sort of positioned others ahead of myself. So I never really thought about what it was Camille wanted to do, what it really was that Camille was passionate about. And it's interesting that you mentioned DELP. I think for me, a lot changed. I would say it's in 2018, and I was working in a job. I was a marketing and membership manager. And I enjoyed my job. I enjoyed what I did, but there was so much more, right? I felt like there was so much more that I should do. I was questioning, right? I was questioning, can I do it? Oh, who am I to think that I could do this? Or there's so many more people out here that probably have better credentials and more knowledge of this. But I talked to a mentor of mine, and I love him. He's now living in Brazil. He retired during the pandemic and had the courage to do something new. And when I was saying these things to him, I didn't even realize how I was sounding. I was just sort of unloading with him. And he listened, which I think is one of the most powerful things that we can do when a person is in the midst of that self identity crisis and trying to figure out where they fit. And you mentioned imposter syndrome, trying to figure that out. I think we listen for those key points where we might be able to identify what the real issue is and how we might be able to help. And he listened to me. And when I finished my venting session, he said to me, why not you? That's the question. He said, I think you keep asking why should it be you? Why could it be you? Why would you do these things? He said, but my question to you is why not you? Why do you think other people are more deserving than you? And I immediately felt a little defensive when he said that, because when someone puts it to you like that, you're like, well, I don't think other people are more deserving than me. Like, you bristle a little bit, and at least I did. And then I had to take a step back and I thought about it. And I was like, well, subconsciously, that's kind of what I'm saying. By not choosing to move forward or not choosing to do things that I'm interested in or passionate about, I am sort of subconsciously reinforcing a belief that I somehow am not worthy. And I think getting past imposter syndrome and those types of hindrances, I'll call them, requires us asking ourselves the question, why not you? Why is it? Why do you think everybody else is worthy and not you? You know what I mean? People have certainly come into opportunities with less knowledge than you've had, less education than you've had, less work experience than you had, all of the things, right? So why not you? The one thing that made them different was that they believed that they were worthy and they tried. So I think in 2018, that's when I really turned a corner, and I decided that I was worthy of reaching more of my goals. And I was doing just fine, but I wanted to aspire to something higher. And so, like you, I applied for DELP. That's the year that I decided to pursue studying for the CAE.
Nice.
And there were lots of things that I tried, and I was terrified. If you want to know the truth, like I'm being very transparent and vulnerable right now, and I will tell you,
Thank you.
I was terrified. I didn't know if I was going to be accepted into DELP. I didn't know if I was going to pass the CAE. I basically kind of shut down my social life for 6 months so I could study. That's how intensely I went at this goal. And that's one thing that I've noticed about myself. They take me a little bit of time to rev up towards something, but when I do, I go at it. And both of those things eventually happened for me. And when it did, it turned a corner, but it all started, getting back to our core word here, with a dare, with having the courage to do something, right?
Mm.
And in terms of what we can do as individuals, any advice that I would give other people is take a single step. For you, I love that you mentioned that you applied for help, even if you were unsure, even if your hand may have been shaking as you were typing the application and thinking, I don't know if this is me, I don't know if I can do this, whatever, you did it. You
Yeah,
took a step. And now you've taken the step of starting this podcast, which I believe is going to be a game changer, right? Which I believe is helping people already, right? You've got people listening right now who are going to glean something, not just from my journey, but hopefully from the journey of others. And so you are making a difference. You have dared to do something. And I told you this privately, but I'm going to say it on your podcast too. I am so immensely proud of you. We
thank
just
you.
met months ago, but I do feel like I've known you for a very long time. And I feel that this is a perfect platform, a perfect podcast, because you are stepping into your authenticity. And it's a beautiful thing to watch.
I really appreciate that. That means a lot. Your story just reminded me of how sometimes if we change our mindset,
Yeah.
we change more things around us.
Yeah.
So I was attending this event that was presented by an Australian Olympic winners at the time.
Mhm.
And there's this one quote from her that I remember until this day. So at the time, when she was a participant of that particular game,
Mhm.
she saw the winner walking up that stage, receiving the trophy or the cheering. And all went through her mind at the time was, anyone can walk up that stage. It might as well be me.
Yes.
And that's the mindset that motivated her
Mhm.
to keep her training, be persistent, and then she won the following Olympic seasons. It's all about mindset.
Yes.
I love this.
Yeah.
I want to explore the threshold point. Is there a threshold point when you realize that you need a real dare to be yourself, or have you always been that way?
That's a really good question.
That's in, so if I can put it in a bit of a context.
Yeah.
So I'm referring to a point where you negotiating with yourself, going back and forth. So you either decided to take on a real dare and go all in again with the unknown, or retreated to the current stage and then just give up and
Yeah.
don't worry about the
Yeah.
unknown out there.
Yeah. I think professionally, the pivot point was 2018 for me. That was just a really interesting year. And I don't know what the catalyst is, honestly. I think I just looked around me and I wasn't satisfied with where I was. It wasn't all about accolades. I am not a person who chases accolades and applause. I grew up, my parents would always say, don't live for the applause, because if you live for the applause, you'll die when it stops. And that's a really intense statement, right? Like it's very intense. But when you think about what it means on a deeper level, they were teaching me not to live for the approval of others or the applause of others, because in life, you're going to go through cycles and seasons, right? People are not always going to love what you do. People are not going to always love who you are. And you're not going to always be necessarily getting accolades and applause from other people. So at some point, you've got to find that joy within yourself. And that has to be enough. You've got to find that motivation within yourself, and that has to be enough. And like I said before, I was really externally focused before. I think that there were areas of my life that I needed to heal. There were things along my journey that had happened both personally and professionally that I needed to heal from. And so it was more comfortable for me for a very long time to just focus on helping other people. I did things like helping my friends practice for interviews, for jobs, and I would always tell them to dream big. And I was everybody's cheerleader cheerleader. I would update their resumes. I would do mock interviews with them. And like a lot of the career work that I'm really interested in, or career focused work, I was doing that for people for free in addition to my day job, and really pushing other people to succeed, but I wasn't pushing myself that same way. In 2018, there was a point at which I looked up and I just had a thought like, is this it? Is this everything? Is this all that I'm going to do? And I decided that it wasn't enough. And that was the point for me. To your question, that was the pivot point for me where I decided to make a change. And I thought I made a list, actually. I'll tell you when it was. It was December 31st, 2017, when I started thinking about this. And then when we crossed over into 2018, in January of 2018, I made a list of things that I wanted to accomplish by the end of the year, both personally and professionally. And I did those things. I just took it one thing at a time. I ticked one thing off the list at a time. So it wasn't like I had this sweeping metamorphosis where everything happened overnight. It didn't. It was totally a journey. And I fell along the way. I scraped my knees along the way. I cried along the way. Everything wasn't always easy. It didn't always come to me as easily as sometimes I've watched other people's journeys and I'm thinking, gosh, they've got a lot of people cheering for them, or they've got like, great networks. And I didn't always have that. I had to be very intentional about building those things and connecting, right? And being focused on getting to the place that I wanted to be, both inside and externally, right? And so I think that was the pivot point, and that has been the journey for me since then. Just under that I am worthy, and every day is that I choose to do something different is an act of courage. It is a dare.
That's amazing. Well, there are a lot I want to unpack in that. The first point, you mentioned that you becomes everyone's cheerleaders.
Yeah.
For us human beings, we thrive better in an environment where we have a good support network.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who's your cheerleaders in your journeys up to today?
Well, I would say I have a big village. I have a big village. And like I said, part of my journey and the exciting part of my journey, you mentioned DELP very early in the conversation. And I think the DELP community has been among my biggest cheerleaders, certainly my family, certainly my personal friends, childhood friends from high school, friends from college. Like I've had those circles, but professionally, I was intentional about building a network and connecting with people. I always had great relationships with my coworkers and colleagues, but it's not just about people you work with. It's about building community of people that you support and who also are willing to support you, who you can call on and they can call on you. And so I think DELP, the Diversity Executive Leadership Network or program that ASAE has developed, has been a huge part of that. I have also been very fortunate to have some really great leaders who I've reported to in different jobs, and I've had great relationships with them. Some of them are DELPers, right? And so sort of having that support there, even as I've moved on through my career journey and am no longer working for them, they have remained champions and supporters. I mentioned my mentor who is now in Brazil. He was the first person to really push me to do something professionally that was out of my comfort zone, something that I didn't feel qualified or ready for. And I will confess that at the time, I was really annoyed with him for doing it. I was working for him at the time, and I was really annoyed with him. And I will never forget, there was a position open. It was a marketing role open in the organization we were working at. And I had been on the membership side of things, which is where I was comfortable. Like I love membership and have a passion for membership. You and I could probably spend all day about that. But this was more marketing focused. So there was events, marketing, product marketing, other things that were going to be required of the role that I hadn't done before. and he pushed me to apply for the job. He encouraged me. And when I said, I don't know, I'm going to do it, he really was a voice of reason. And I think he's been a champion. That was the first time that he really championed me, but it was not the last. And he has just been such an amazing support system throughout my journey and still is, even from Brazil. I would say that's been the group for me, my family, my personal friends, and also my professional networks have just been amazing.
Thank you for giving them a shout out through
Yeah.
my channel.
Yeah. Yeah.
The other thing that I love about your story is you talk about you have to find the joy within yourself, and that has to be enough so that you can deal with the world.
Mhm.
But then when we think about the concept of enough,
Mhm.
my take on that is you gotta have abundance so that you can realize the concept of enough, if that makes sense. Because if you never have something abundantly, you never feel that it is enough and you keep chasing more.
That's powerful.
Do you feel the same way?
Yeah. Yeah, I do.
And
So powerful.
do you
Wow.
have any stories around that you can share to elaborate this sense of abundance versus enough?
Yeah, I am a big believer in contentment, but not complacency. I think it's important to be content in your journey. And I think what I'm hearing you describe is sort of a place of people having to reach contentment, right? When you say abundance is enough, what I'm hearing is that people have to learn to be content at some point in their lives, right? Otherwise, you keep chasing it, right? And I think a lot of times people mistake contentment for complacency. So when you say I'm content in my role, or I'm content with my family, or I'm content in my lifestyle, or whatever the relevancy there may be, I think we live in such a performance driven society that people hear complacency. They're not striving for anything else. They don't want to do anything else. Nothing's bigger, or they don't have any bigger aspirations. And that's not true. I think it's just about learning to be happy where you are, even if you are still striving for other things. I think that is, for me, the definition of abundance. And I think that's a place where I am right now. I haven't sat down and said, oh, I don't want to do anything more. I don't want to do anything else. And I'm in this place of abundance and I don't need to achieve anything else. That's far from true. I still have goals in front of me. And I think we all do. Right now that I think about it, it's probably one of the reasons that our organizations push us to do goal setting every year, because we should always have something else in front of us that we're working toward. I think that is part of what motivates us as humans, is looking out and seeing what else there is that we can achieve or contribute. But even in the space of having future focused goals or future focused interests, I think there's a way to be happy. And how you achieve that understanding of abundance, I think it's going to be unique to different people. Frankly, if I'm being honest, I don't think everybody can do it. I think everybody should do it, but I think it takes a level of introspection and happiness with who you are as a person, and understanding that you are not your job. You are not the letters behind your name. You are not the money in your bank account. You deserve and are worthy of love and joy and peace and safety, because you are you. You are a uniquely created being, and you are worthy of whatever good thing that you want in your life. And people have to get to that point on their own. So I don't know if there is a particular piece of advice that I could give someone to get there. I think if you're not there, and you are you have to be introspective. And I think if you are finding that you are defining your worth or not feeling good enough, if you're not constantly achieving something new or getting the applause, remember I mentioned the applause earlier.
Yeah.
If you're not getting the applause, I think that's an opportunity to take a step back and figure out why. Why are you defined by those things? Why are you not content with where you are? And that may require introspection, but that may require help. And I believe in therapy. I believe getting help from external sources if we need help with that introspection, and with pulling ourselves out of that space of being so externally driven and led, because our joy should not be tied to the accolades or the things or the whatever. I think that there's so much power in what you said, recognizing the abundance in our lives every day, and being content there, even though we may have aspirations to do something greater in the future.
I love how you describe how you're balancing all the thoughts process.
Yeah.
It makes it easier for us to introspect how we can learn from it.
Yeah.
I have one more big question.
Yeah.
So we're living in a society, taking risks and daring to do something outside of one comfort zone can sometimes involve acting in ways that are not true to our authentic self. Examples. Someone might feel the pressure to conform with social expectations, or peer pressures can also fit into that example. How can we balance our value and our authentic self with social expectations and external pressure on us to perform and to conform?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I think it harkens back to everything that we've been talking about through the journey of our conversation. If you are a person who is driven by applause, or those external factors, you may have a more difficult time with finding that balance between what other people think you should be and do versus what you think you should be and do. Audre Lorde said that you had to define yourself for yourself, right? Otherwise, you'd be crushed by the weight of other people's thoughts and opinions and their images of what you should be. And I'm paraphrasing that a bit. But I think there's so much truth in that statement. I think it goes back to defining yourself for yourself. And, I've said this word so many times throughout our conversation, is introspection. I think you have to figure out what drives you, what motivates you, what brings you joy, and find your peace there. Find your place of safety there. Find your contentment there. And I have found in my own life that when I have done that, when I have made peace with who I want Camille to be and what I think is important, everything else outside of that is just noise, right? It's not that you don't hear it. It's not that you won't be affected by it. I think it's impossible to live in the world and not see and observe and sometimes feel the pressures, right? That just makes you human, right? I love the title of this podcast, Humans of Authenticity. I think if we're being authentic, if we can just admit that we're going to feel those pressures, we're going to, it's because we're human, right? But you don't have to bend to it, right? Once you know who you are and you have defined yourself, it doesn't matter what everybody else around you is doing. Sure, you may look and think, oh, that's a wonderful thing she's doing over there, or that's awesome. Sometimes you may even think, oh, I wish I could do that, or I wish it was me. But then you get back to, is that the thing that's really going to bring me joy? I want to use a practical example there. When you get into programs like DELP, it's a real blessing. And I'm going to use that word because that's what I feel like it is in my life. But the challenge, I think, of that sometimes is that you look around and you're in this environment with a lot of high achievers, right? A lot of people who are driven, right? Just like you are. And if you are not careful, it is very easy to start measuring yourself against that. And I think sometimes the measuring can be a good thing because it's motivation, right? It's like, oh, I can do this thing too. They did it, I can do it type of thing. But if you are not careful, you can get lost in that. and just trying to keep up and keep pace, you can find yourself racing to do things that you aren't even really interested in doing, or things that don't even bring you joy, just to say that you've done it, right? Just to keep pace with what other people are doing. That is not the program's fault. That's something that's wired within all of us who are high achievers. It's finding our peace and our pace, right? You find your peace and then you'll know your pace.
I
You'll
love that.
know what opportunities you should strive for. And like I said, all the other stuff at that point is just noise. And when you reach that place of peace and pace within yourself, you can be happy for other people's accomplishments, even if they are not yours, even if you are not on that same journey or track. You can genuinely applaud them without feeling those pangs of inadequacy within yourself. You can have the courage to dare to do something different and to step out and not worry about the external noise of what other people are going to think, because you are laser focused on your journey. There was a movie out some years ago. It's been maybe 10, 15 years now. And forgive me, the title escapes me right now. And of course, I'm going to think of it after the podcast ends. It was about a group of men and women who were competing in motorcycle racing. The guy who kept winning, who was the most formidable in the motorcycle club, because when he got on his bike, he had this unique ability to become laser focused. He almost developed this tunnel vision where he could only see what was in front of him. He was only focused on his journey, right? And everybody else who was beside him, who was racing, they were all looking around at the competition and looking to see where they were in comparison to other people. But he didn't. He only focused on his end goal. And at the end, he always won. And in the movie, there's an arc. I don't want to give it away in case someone happens to watch it, but there's an arc, of course, and a situation that causes him to, or threatens him losing focus. When he loses that, that is the thing that creates the challenges for him. So the one thing that I would leave the audience with today, if nothing else, is in order to find your peace, find your pace, right? And I think the two things work interchangeably together, right? Once you find your peace, you'll find your pace, and you'll be able to set your pace. And when you step out to dare and have the courage to do something, you'll do it because it's something that's going to contribute to your journey and make you happy, and make you feel more fulfilled. And that is the pace that you will move at, right? You'll know when you need to speed it up and do more, or when you need to dial it back and bask in the abundance and the contentment, right? You will know, but you've got to tap in to your authentic self. You've got to be introspective. You've got to figure out what makes you happy and what brings you joy, and live by that, not by the external noise.
Yeah. I love how you really define the boundaries so that we can clarify the internal pace and the noise. I love that. How are you feeling so far? We talk a lot about your experience, and I feel a lot of good energies coming through. So I just want to check in to see how you are feeling right now.
Yeah. You mean professionally in terms of change and things like that? Or, yeah.
As in your emotion at this current moment, how are you feeling after sharing all of those stories with
Oh,
us?
yeah. Yeah. One thing that I know about myself, again, this is introspection, right? Very rarely can people tell you anything about yourself that you don't already know, right? Because you've dug deep, you've looked within yourself and you figured things out. Not that you've mastered everything, but you've identified the great and sometimes not so great qualities, right? And one of the things that I know about myself is that I am a communicator. I enjoy that. Sometimes maybe a little more than I should, but I enjoy
Nothing wrong with that.
it. And I think to that end, sharing experiences like this, they do bring me joy because I believe very firmly in the power of storytelling. I believe very firmly that all of us who have reached a pivot point in our lives where we dared to do something different or had the courage to step out and do something, it probably was something that we saw or heard on someone else's journey that made us know that we were worthy or that motivated us to believe that we could do it as well. And so I feel good. I feel good about this. And I think that this is something that's really going to help people. It's something I am passionate about, you are passionate about. And so I think that's a shared space for us. And I love it. I love what you're doing here. So thank you for including me. It's been an honor to be with you today.
I appreciate that. And thank you for being very open, very vulnerable in our conversation and share your stories. So let's shift gears to something a bit more exciting.
Yeah.
What next in the coming 12 months for you?
That's a really great question. Well, I've started a new job back in May. So I'm close to 6 months in now. So really getting my footing. I have some professional goals that I've set for myself around that. I'm working on a certification or two. So yeah, I'm in that space where I really focused on some achievements that I've set for myself. Those are things that I'm focused on right now. On a personal note, I am on a fitness journey. Every year, all of us grow a year older and hopefully a year wiser. And I want to do that with grace. And I think the way to do that is taking care of ourselves. And so I am being very intentional in my focus about taking care of myself, mind, body, and spirit right now. So I think that's a journey for me. And I set some personal goals around that. Hopefully, what my 12 months looks like is achieving those goals and making a positive difference in other people's lives and journeys along the way.
Thank you for sharing that. So go back to our keyword, dare.
Mhm.
How does dare fit into your plan to achieve those goals in the coming 12 months?
Yeah. Well, I think getting to the definition of dare, which is, according to the dictionary, having the courage to do something, it fits because everything that I've set out to do is something new that I've never done before. And I think having the courage to innovate and do something different and be better, right? Not by anyone else's standards, but by the standards internally that I've set for self, right? I am my competition. A friend of mine always says it's me versus me. It's impossible to achieve anything if you don't dare to do so. You have to take the first step and keep stepping after that. So I think this fits very squarely with what my focus is for the next 12 months. That's also one of the reasons that I chose the word. I'm daring to do a lot right now. So,
Nice.
this sort of felt like a natural fit there.
Nice. I love how you mentioned a lot about taking baby steps.
Yeah.
I found that in all the steps that we are taking, the first step's always the hardest. And that's where dare for me coming into the picture. We just need to dare to take that first step.
Yeah. Yes.
And then the rest will just follow through
Yeah.
very nicely.
Yes. Yes.
We are getting to our last question of this episode. Thank you so much for being patient with me so far.
Sure.
Now, this is a fun one. If you were going on a dream vacation tomorrow, what would be the one item that you take with you and why?
Goodness, that's a, a dream vacation. And
Just
only
one item.
one item. So now I'm in a struggle with my practical self versus my
So what pops up in your mind first?
to be honest with you, I don't know that this is a great thing, but my cell phone, for some reason, I don't know why. I think that's indicative of the society that we live in right now. But yeah, that sense of connection. And because I'm like, again, have lots of questions, right? I'm a communicator. I've got lots of questions, things I need to understand about this vacation. The dream vacation. Am I alone? Am I not connected with other people? Am I on some kind of desert? So I've got lots of questions, but that is the first thing that popped into my head, my cell phone. I don't necessarily think that that's the best thing, but I would besides my cell phone, let's push that out of the way. The second thing that I would say would be a good book. I am an avid reader. I read everywhere. And when I can't actually have my nose in a book, I purchased a subscription to Audible. And so shout out to them. They should give you a sponsorship or something, right? But yeah, it allows me when I'm commuting to work on the days that we go into the office, I am listening to a book, or when I'm on the elliptical machine at the gym, I'm listening to a book. I love music too, but I'm listening to a book a lot of the time as well. So I think a book would probably be a good answer.
What's your top favorite books that you have read
Hmm.
so far?
Yeah. So, oh God, that's a hard one because there's so many, but I'm going to go with fun on this one. I'm not going to go with nonfiction because nonfiction, we'd be here all day. But with fiction, I have always been a lover of John Grisham books. He does the sort of legal mystery suspense fiction.
Nice.
I have a lot of books. You can't see it because my background's a little blurred, but I have a bookshelf behind me, and there is a whole shelf that is just John Grisham books.
Nice.
Yeah, I love his stuff. And some of them have been made into movies and things like that, but I stand by the book solidly. He's a great author.
Great. That's the end of our episode today. Thank you again for your time and sharing your story with us.
Yeah, thank you.
That's it for today's episode. Drop your thoughts in the comment section. I'd love to hear your take on the chosen keyword. Have a lovely time, and thank you again for spending time with Humans of Authenticity. Until next time.